So I was working at this sushi restaurant in Los Angeles, one of my earliest jobs here in California, and at this particular point, it was the end of the month, my rent was due the next day, and I was basically broke. I was just living, month to month, week to week, living off of tips, of course, and I remember specifically thinking that there was absolutely no way I could pay my rent the next day. I was kind of like turning into a depressed guy about it, and this was sort of out of the norm. Usually I was just getting by, but at this particular time, it was like this Grand Canyon amount of money that I needed. It was this huge gap, and I basically knew going into my night of work that I wasn't gonna make the money, but there's always this tinge of hope that every server has. You're like, maybe I'll just make a ton of money tonight. So I end up going into work, and about 75% through the night, I knew it was very clear I wasn't gonna make this money. And I turned into super depressed guy. I was walking around just moping, just kind of like, hey guys, how's it going? And I was kind of like having this inventory of my life at the time, just thinking like, what am I doing with myself? Why am I such a loser? Why don't I have money? I should be making more money than this. I shouldn't be putting myself in this position over and over again, but this happened to be a really bad position. So as I'm working the night and helping out all of my customers, Martin Lawrence walks into the restaurant. And just to keep in mind, this was a pretty popular restaurant, so it wasn't out of the norm that like anyone could come in. So it was just kind of like another person, and he sat down in my section. So I go take Martin's order. He was there with a couple friends. I specifically remember that his order was a little small, and it was kind of like an in and out type thing. And so I take his order, I'm dealing with other customers, still kind of moping around, being super depressed guy still. As I'm kind of sweeping through the restaurant, I see Martin and his friends are like, hey, we're done. It was, like I said, a very, very quick dinner. And I end up dropping the check over at his table, go in the back, come back around, I grab his check, and the second I grab his check, him and his buddies thanked me, and then they stood up. And for any server, or basically anyone probably knows this, but typically when you pay in cash, you drop the check and you just go at your own leisure. Obviously, if you pay with a card, you need to wait for the server to come back, run the card, and so you stay seated. So when he got up, I knew that he had paid in cash. And so I'm walking away, he's walking in another direction, and I happen to peek open the book that the check was in, and I see just like a ton of money. So I quickly like skirt around the corner, and I start counting the money. And the money was a little bit more than what I needed to pay my rent, but it was like oddly close to how much I needed to pay my rent. It was uncomfortably close, and I thought someone was playing a joke on me. I thought that maybe one of my friends that I told this to somehow relayed word back to Martin Lawrence that I needed a very specific amount of money, and he happened to leave it in the check. And it was like, it didn't make any sense. So I count through it like 6 times over. Finally I conclude like, this has to be a mistake. There is no chance that this is not a mistake. So I'm like, damn it, I gotta go talk to Martin Lawrence about this because this just isn't right. So I end up walking up to Martin, who's oddly just kind of hanging by himself, like in the corner. No one was really hanging with him. And so I went up to him, I'm like, hey, excuse me. Hey, Martin Lawrence, hi, I was just your server. And he was like, yeah, hi, thank you. And I said, so, Martin, you just left a lot of money in this for your bill here. And he was like, yeah, thank you. I was like, is this the right amount of money? And he was like, yeah. I was like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, it is. I was like, really? And finally he was like, yes, this money is for you. This is all for you. Thank you. You did a good job. And I was just staring at Martin Lawrence, and like this weird like wave of emotions like came over me, because in a weird way it was like this restore of humanity, and like it was like this really, really nice guy, and like I had heard about this happening to people, but it never happened to me before, and it just didn't really make sense. And I'm just staring at Martin Lawrence like, who is this guy? Why would he be so nice to me? Like, this doesn't add up to me in my head. And so finally I'm like on the verge of breaking down to him, because now I know that I can live in my apartment for another month. And I end up telling him, I said, Martin, you just paid my rent. I hope you know this, and I wish you could understand what this means to me, but you just helped me get by like another month. And he ended up patting me on the shoulder and said, thank you, God bless. And his friends conveniently like walked around a corner, and he ends up just walking right past me, gives me another pat, and I just stood there. And I walked to the back just thinking like, what just happened? In this weird way, Martin Lawrence like restored my like faith in humanity. It sounds like even crazy to even talk about, but the timing of him being there and how everything played out is just, it just doesn't make sense to me to this day. Besides the fact that Martin Lawrence may be a guardian angel, but it was at that point in time that I said to myself, I will forever watch every single episode of Martin. Whenever I'm flipping through a channel, if I ever see it on TV, I'm stopping on it. And it was because of this moment, because I don't know how else I could have repaid Martin Lawrence. So that's kind of like the deal I made with myself and his TV program. Martin Lawrence changed my life, and I will forever watch Martin. Thank you, Martin Lawrence.
Damn!